a wonderful place existed.
The Athenians called it the Acropolis. Free expression, ethics, art, philosophy. The Acropolis heralded the democracy. But if I told you the Acropolis has returned. Acropolis News. News from the Acropolis.
I'm an American. I like my cars fast and my burgers delicious. But what I also like is the government to get a warrant before it violates my rights. And that's why I trust NordVPN. NordVPN is one of the most affordable VPNs out there with a wide listing range of features, including features that help boost your computer's overall speed and performance, which with the internet here, God knows, not only do I need and use, but the thing is, there is a good chance that you both need and could use a VPN yourself. So why not help the channel out? Click the affiliate link down below in the description and get yourself one of the best VPNs out there at the most affordable price. In the meantime, enjoy the rest of the show.
All right, let us begin with the Trevor Report. We have this from a tweet via Tom Elliott in this MSNBC special. Culture is black women. Panelists complain about the racism of TV makeup stylists not tending to their hair. Insufficient makeup supplies. Inadequate style prep before shooting a Time magazine cover. Workplaces banning braids, twists, and bantu knots. Now, what this sounds like is it sounds like elitism, but I thought white people were privileged. I thought that white people are intrinsically evil for being born. At least that's what you gather when you read the evil black nationalism of the critical race theory Necronomicon. I have it in my bookshelf over there, or my closet over there, as it were, but everyone on this panel of rich, elite, pseudo-benevolent, there's Joy Reid, who's become a black nationalist as of late. I'm pretty sure they're all black nationalists, actually. Yeah, I think I remember these faces, and they've all said some black nationalist talking point at some point or another. But, yeah. That's... Honestly, I would be angry about this. I would be upset about this. I am an integrationist after all, but, well, I'm quite used to my betters being in the elite. Here is this video right here. Wisconsin first grade teacher leads her students in Pledge of Allegiance to the Pan-African flag. Now, I'm currently having an issue with OBS right now where it does record the desktop audio, but it's very scratchy. I don't know why that's happening. I'll try my best to fix that later. I think I'll just need to change the decibel range or something like that, but I haven't found the decibel range that works. So I'll figure all that later. But basically, she says, "I pledge allegiance to the Pan-African flag." Let me just quote her. Put your fists up. Put up the put up a black nationalist symbol of force. Okay, do the red salute. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the Afro-American people and under God. Does she say under God? Oh, wait. I will protect freedom, seek peace, and honor our ancestors, and support the prosperity of people of African descent. This is black nationalism. It is the same thing as white nationalism, as I have to constantly explain to people. Okay, the red salute is no different than the Nazi salute. It's the exact same thing. It means the same thing. You should do the Nazi salute. You know, it's just after all, it's just solidarity for the German working people, right? You don't hate Germans, do you? You don't hate Aryans, do you? And then they do the same thing with the red salute, with their race nationalism layered on top of it. You don't hate black people, do you? Put your fist up. You don't hate black people, do you? It's just solidarity for the elite. Now, obviously, not every black person is in this situation. Not every black person is in the position of power to be able to proselytize an entire classroom, presumably over and over again, along the false axioms of race radicalism. Not every black person can sit at a table and wine and dine with a bunch of their fellow rich elitists. This isn't the case for the vast majority of Americans, but it is for them. It is this way for our betters, our identitarian aristocrats, Robin DiAngelo, Ibram X. Kennedy, the Black Lives Matter staff, the caste system of pseudo-benevolence that is most evident during Pride Month, but permeates throughout the United States year after year after year after year. I don't like the fact that they're basically just celebrating their heist, essentially. But we got to move on. We have even more leftist terrorism. But before we get into even more leftist terrorism from leftists, we have this from Just the News. Supreme Court strikes down Maine policy excluding religious schools from tuition assistance. So the exclusion of religious schools was found to violate the First Amendment. There are a lot of people, I guess, on the dissidents side of things, on the populist side of things, that think this is a win, but after I read a little bit of it, I'm going to provide an argument as to why this is in fact not a win. The Supreme Court on Tuesday ruled that refusing tuition acceptance to students attending religious schools when it is offered to secular schools is unconstitutional. Among the in the case Carson v. Mackin, Maine's Department of Education had instituted a policy that would pay tuition to some students who attended private schools if their district did not offer a public school. Among the requirements, the department demanded that the school must be non-sectarian in accordance with the First Amendment. The change was only instituted in 1991 following an advisory opinion by the Attorney General. However, the court determined that the requirement in fact violates the Free Exercise Clause of the First Amendment. Regardless of how the benefit and restriction are described, the program operates to identify and exclude otherwise eligible schools on the basis of their religious exercise, Roberts wrote in his opinion. Now, what I'm going to argue isn't something from a legal standpoint. It is something from a dissident standpoint. Okay, the Okay, the reason why this is going on in the classroom is because the government is requiring that this be done. Okay? Joe Biden has instituted a lot of critical race theory praxis into the school curriculums, and what that essentially means for everybody is black nationalism in schools. They have extended Title IX to the extent that it becomes a queer theorist's dream. Where, and again, all previous Trevor reports linked down below in the description as always, where middle schoolers get sexual harassment charges, where if the charges go through, it means that this middle schooler will be put on the sex offender registry for not addressing his feudal lord properly, or as the aristocrats put it, not using someone's preferred pronouns. Basically, the story is a bunch of kids. There was a kid who's like, I identify as non-binary, and there was a middle schooler, presumably who cannot be groomed, as it were. He was like, no, that's stupid. Absolutely based middle schooler, by the way. But what essentially happened was that he was just it didn't matter. It didn't matter. He did not address his feudal lord properly. And there are punishments for that. Anyway, let's continue. But before I continue on to the next one, the point I'm trying to make is that there are certain acts of what I'm going to call colonization that comes with receiving federal grants, especially from the Biden administration's black nationalist, ethno-nationalist agenda, because he is sided with the critical race theorists. So now these religious schools who before not getting this grant money, well, now that they are getting this grant money, they're qualified to do. They're basically, in order to receive the grant money, they have to engage in acts of colonization along with our betters. But anyway, let's continue, because our betters are actively doing whatever they can to just, I don't know. Let's continue. The FBI is investigating Jane's revenge attacks on pro-life groups after Republicans demand action. Basically, there have been like 20 pro-life centers now that have been firebombed, basically, and Republicans are demanding that Jane's revenge be investigated by the FBI. Now, because apparently they're responsible. So that's fine. If people are actively engaging in terrorism, that's what we have this apparatus for. But the blade of tolerance will only cut one way. I forget who said that, but brilliant point, right? If what we hear from the corporate press right now is Jan 6, Jan 6, Jan 6, Jan 6. Right, January 6th, over and over and over and over and over again. Are we going to get an investigation into the violent riots in pursuit of racial power in the summer of racism, pillaging, and death from our betters? No, and the reason we're not going to get an investigation into that is because they are our betters. They are our feudal lords. We have to do whatever they say, whenever they say it. Because if we don't, then it is a moral failing on our part. And then, of course, when we, the lessers of society, defend ourselves from being attacked, we are branded by the by the media as a white supremacist domestic terrorist. They did the same thing with the Mimas who stumbled their way into the Capitol. They did that with Kyle Rittenhouse. They will do this to anyone who defends themselves or others, because our betters cannot allow people who have a sense of justice to protect the innocent and protect the vulnerable. Now, what I'm describing is gaslighting abuse, and anyone who's experienced gaslighting abuse will understand why I am so adamantly against this. Okay, fundamentally, this is what gaslighting abusers do. Okay, the first thing they do is they do something to you. They do it over and over and over and over and over again. If you have a problem with what they're doing to you, then that is a moral failing on your part. But then when you retaliate, when the gaslighting abuse becomes too much for you, right? It is a moral failing on your part, because in the relationship between the abuser and not the abuser will always win. Okay? Always. All right? Until it gets to a point where you just can't take it anymore, and you just leave the relationship, and that's basically what's happening here, right? The Republicans who are demanding action are, while some of them may be establishment Republicans, others perhaps could be dissident Republicans. What they're essentially arguing is equal protection they're asking for equal protection and equal rights under the law. That essentially means the equal treatment under the law as well. And what our abusers are arguing, and to be fair, they write out their gaslighting abuse and how they're going to do it and why they're doing it in excruciating detail. You could read Herbert Marcuse's Repressive Tolerance, I believe is what it's called. You could do that as well. I should probably cover that on the American Gracchus podcast, actually, at some point. But anyway, long story short, people are demanding that gaslighting abusers treat them equally and with respect, which is a fair thing to ask, but it's not going to happen. It's just not going to happen. Okay? It doesn't work, trust me. Anyway, let's continue. Night of Rage. And then they state explicitly and then the gaslighting abusers state explicitly what they're going to do in their own words. But when the abuser is being violent, it's good. But when you defend yourself from that violence, you're bad, basically. DC call to action. Night of Rage. The night SCOTUS overturns Roe v. Wade hit the streets. You said you'd riot. To our oppressors, if abortions aren't safe, you aren't either. Jane's Revenge. Now, Jane's Revenge is the group that people want investigated, and fine. Suppose that's. Again, I'm not against investigations of terrorism when people say they're going to commit acts of terrorism. Another thing too is I don't think justice should be, well, to be fair, there is allegations so far that they've committed 20 acts of terrorism, or that they're responsible for 20 acts of terrorism. But basically, if they're just saying things and then people act on it, you punish the people who acted on it, okay? And then we as a society can scorn the people who said, oh, blah, who said to do it. I don't think people should be punished for just saying things, right? However, if it turns out that any of the people in Jane's Revenge committed the terrorism themselves, which it's not a stretch to say that they probably did, and if they're doing this, by the way, according to the leftist framework of free speech, this does not qualify under freedom of speech. Okay, they are openly advocating to violently pillage, and in a particular place, in a particular time, because they don't like that the Supreme Court is because they don't like that the Supreme Court might find the murder of babies to be unconstitutional, which, wow. But anyway, let's continue. Mises Caucus takes control of the Libertarian Party. This is a good thing, because the Libertarian Party, to be fair, the Libertarian Party has kind of always been a joke in the United States, but the Mises Caucus is actually relatively sane. Like, they're sane. They're sane libertarians, but and the reason why I know they're sane libertarians is because foes accuse it of right-wing deviationism and racism. They're basically accusing the Mises Caucus of taking away votes from uniparty candidates, which, cool. I'm completely in favor of that. They're also accusing the Mises Caucus of racism. And they're presumably being accused of racism by evil black nationalists, which, okay, cool. And let's continue. A 4-year battle for control of the Libertarian Party ended Saturday in Reno with a victory for the Mises Caucus at the party's national convention. The faction's chosen candidate for chair of the party's national committee, and Angela McArdle, won on the first round of balloting with 692 votes, more than 69% of voting delegates. McArdle's first tweet after winning was characteristic of her Caucus style. It mocked the LP's recent past, quote tweeting a March 2020 post from that mentioned social distracting. She told the convention Friday she would not allow the party to humiliate ourselves and alienate everyone when faced with the next COVID style crisis. So basically, what happened was during the whole COVID stuff, the Libertarian Party, not the Mises Caucus, but the Libertarian Party became very authoritarian. They basically became not libertarians, and they were like, everybody has to get the vaccine. Like, everybody has to get the vaccine. Everybody has to comply with government mandates. So it's just like, oh, so you're not principally Republican. And then the Mises Caucus was like, well, we're going to kick you out. And so they kicked him out. Fantastic. Everything's good. Everything's great. But there's also, on the national populist side of things, Liz Cheney is probably not going to be a congresswoman anymore, because she was voted in as a Republican, but she's a establishment Democrat, and she has the politics of a establishment Democrat, and you can see that she has the politics of an establishment Democrat because she uses all of the establishment Democrat talking points. She presents herself and goes around and acts like a Hillary Clinton clone. Okay, she is a warmonger, just like her father before her, who's also a Republican and also in Congress. And the Republican Party is becoming anti-war because the Republican Party, or at least on the national populist side of things, they're actually listening to their own constituents, which is what you're supposed to do anyway. But fine, I guess. But also, Britt defeats Brooks in Alabama Senate runoff. Another Trump-backed candidate. To be fair, there are a few Trump-backed candidates that have lost, but the vast majority of them have won. And that's a cool thing, and that's a great thing. But what we got to talk about right now is we got to talk about Stephen Colbert. Stephen Colbert committed insurrection. Stephen Colbert should be arrested because he leads a racist, sexist, homophobic, alt-right, Nazi, maggot, fascist, bigot, fascist organization to storm the Capitol and the blah 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 blah. Look, I'm being mostly facetious right now, but to be fair, what Colbert did was far worse than even what the rioters in Jan 6 were doing. Okay, never mind the grandma Mimas or the people who were let in by the police. Okay, I'm probably getting ahead of myself, but the point is, Colbert was basically he sent his staff into a government building when the government building was closed, and then the police officers that were there were like, "Yo, you can't come in here, bro. The thing is closed." So they were let in. They were let in, basically, and given tours by Democrat senators. Apparently, and you should follow Marjorie Taylor Greene on Getter, by the way. They were knocking on her door. Like, this is like in the middle of the night. They were knocking on everyone's doors. To be fair, but someone just let them in after they were told that they couldn't. After they were told that they couldn't come in, and it's just a huge mess. All right, but Colbert defended it as hijinks with the intent to goof. Hijinks with the intent to goof. Last week, I heard from my old colleague, Triumph, the insult comic dog, Colbert said in an opening monologue. Triumph offered to go down to D.C. to interview some Congress people to highlight the Gen 6 hearings. I said, sure, if you can get anyone to agree to talk to you, and please don't take this as an insult, you're a puppet. Multiple lawmakers from both parties, however, agreed to sit downs. Colbert said, blah, 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 blah. Basically, they were invited with the proper security clearance at specific days and specific times, etc., etc., etc. Okay. And then after they were given that, they went into a time where they weren't allowed to be in, and for all intents and purposes, basically broke in. I'm going to cover this more on Friday's Trevor Report when there are some more when all of the details and such will be finalized. But what I want to do is I want to end on a white pill. Board unanimously approves Elon Musk's $44 billion Twitter takeover bid. This is a good thing. I've already made my opinions clear of what's going to happen when Elon Musk takes over. I think what's going to happen is Elon Musk will take over. He will see the critical race theory and queer theory praxis permeating all throughout the company, a company that's very large and employs a lot of people. And what's essentially going to happen is he's going to be a horse. He's going to be a horse on. He's going to be riding an out of control horse with the reins. He'll be able to rein in the horse a little bit, but at the end of the day, it's still an out of control horse. He'll probably fall off the horse a few times and fall in the mud or whatever happens when you fall off. Whatever happens when you fall off a horse. I only climbed off horses, but the point is, it's kind of an uphill battle, even for someone as dedicated as Elon Musk is. To be fair, I hope he succeeds, but I'm going to stick with the Liberty platforms. I'm going to stick with Getter because Getter is a better Twitter. I'm going to stick with True Social and Gap and Minds and stuff. I'm not doing these Silicon Valley Authority platforms. They have even if they have a different person in charge, there's going to have to be huge systemic reforms that take place for years for me to, or just however long the systemic reforms would take for me to join any of these Silicon Valley Authority platforms, because I don't see it as worth it for me and for my business model. But anyway, in the meantime, my name is Trevor Brown, and you just watched the Trevor Report. Do click the Linktree I was forced to make down below in the description, because Linktree banned my Linktree for opposing black nationalism. So I made my new one down below in the description. All of you brilliant viewers out there, my name is Trevor Brown. I am the editor-in-chief of Acropolis News Network, because I can give myself whatever name and title I want because I own it. You could go to theacropolisnews.com, or you could go to ThisJustTrevor on whatever Liberty platform is your choice. You know, except for the ones I'm not on, because I haven't seen them pretty much.
Acropolis News. News from the Acropolis.